Imagine teaching a child to swim by throwing them into a river and walking away. Imagine building a house on sand and then being surprised when the child inside learns to carry their own. Foundation. Imagine handing someone a survival manual they never asked for at age 5 and calling their ability to read a character flaw. This is what early betrayal does. Not the dramatic betrayal. Not the ones with witnesses and apologies and clean endings. The quiet kind. The repeated kind. The kind that didn't announce itself as betrayal at all, that arrived, wearing the face of love, of family, of the people who were supposed to be the floor beneath your feet. And the child, being smarter than anyone gave them credit for, adapted. They didn't decide to become independent. They didn't read a book about self-reliance. They didn't choose a philosophy. They simply learned, early and permanently, that depending on others was a position they could not afford to stay in. What was built from that lesson is not damage. It is not a disorder. It is one of the most sophisticated survival architectures the human nervous system is capable of producing. This video is about how it was built, what it costs, what it gives, and why the adult who carries it is one of the most capable, most perceptive, most quietly extraordinary people alive. The lesson that arrived too early. Imagine a bridge that was never finished. On one side, the child. On the other side, the people who were supposed to be safe. The original design. Not dramatically, just inconsistently. Sometimes it held. Sometimes it didn't. Sometimes the crossing was safe, and sometimes the same crossing became a lesson in how quickly safety could disappear. And the child, standing on their side of the river, made a calculation. Not a conscious one, an organismic one, the kind that happens below the level of language, in the cortisol response and the nervous system and the deep wiring that forms before words exist. The calculation was simple. If the bridge can't be trusted, stop needing to cross it. Psychologist John Bowlby called what developed next avoidant attachment, but that clinical term underestimates what actually happened. What happened was a complete reorganization of the child's relationship to dependence. They didn't just become self-sufficient. They built an internal infrastructure so robust, so sophisticated, so thoroughly independent of external support that most adults never develop anything close to it. The betrayal didn't break them. It made them the most capable version of themselves they could have become. And it made them pay for it before they were old enough to consent to the cost. What the nervous system learned to do. Imagine a house alarm system that was tripped every night for years. Every night, the alarm fires. Every morning, the occupant resets it. Every night, it fires again. After enough nights, something changes. The system stops needing to be triggered. It just runs, continuously, at low volume, as the permanent background frequency of every experience in the house. This is cortisol imprinting. When early relationships are consistently unsafe, when the people providing care are also the people generating threat, the stress response system recalibrates. Not temporarily, not until the situation improves, permanently. But it is also the most accurate social radar that any human being can develop. And it was forged at a cost that most people never had to pay. The architecture of self-sufficiency. Imagine a tree that grew without a trellis. Every other tree in the garden was trained upward, supported, guided, shaped by external structure. They grew quickly. They grew tall. They grew exactly in the direction they were pointed. But this tree had no trellis. It had to find its own direction, had to develop its own internal structure, had to grow a root system so deep and so wide that no amount of wind could tip it. It doesn't look the same as the others. But try to uproot it. Try to move it. Try to make it dependent on external support. That is the hyper-independent adult. They handle their own problems before asking for help. Not from pride, but because asking for help was historically more expensive than handling the problem alone. They do not need emotional maintenance from others. Not because they don't feel, but because they learn to process internally rather than externally. They keep their own counsel. make their own decisions, carry their own weight, and often other people's weight without broadcasting the effort. And they keep their distance. Not cold distance, calculated distance. The distance of someone who knows exactly how much a certain kind of closeness costs and who has decided, not from bitterness, but from earned wisdom, that the cost-benefit analysis has to work before the investment is made. That distance is not a wound. It is a policy, and it keeps distance from exactly the kind of person who made it necessary. The world has a name for this person. Several, actually. Difficult, cold, emotionally unavailable, commitment phobic, too independent, intimidating, closed off. And here is what the world doesn't say out loud. Most of the people applying those labels are the exact profile of person that made the independence necessary in the first place. The person who calls hyper-independence cold is the person who benefits from dependence. The person who calls self-sufficiency intimidating is the person whose power requires your need. The person who calls the distance a problem is the person who cannot get to you through it. The hyper-independent adult has a gift that most people will spend their entire lives trying to develop. They can recognize, in the first few exchanges, whether a person is offering genuine connection or constructing a ledger, whether the warmth is real or a method, whether the interest is in them or in what access to them provides. They learn to read this not from a book, from the earliest, most painful curriculum available. The people who call this person damaged are the ones who couldn't pass the test they set and are angry that the test exists. The gift in the wreckage. The bridge collapsed too many times, so they stopped needing the bridge. They learned to swim. They built their own crossing, and now they carry their own foundation everywhere they go. And yes, it is lonely sometimes. The independence that keeps you safe also keeps you from the kind of easy, effortless connection that people who were never betrayed take for granted. But here is what early betrayal also gave you. It gave you standard, a real one, not a performance, not a preference, not a casual filter, but a genuine standard built from the knowledge of what happens when you accept less. It gave you a perception of people that borders on unfair, the ability to read intention beneath presentation, to sense inconsistency before it surfaces, to know the difference between genuine and performed warmth before most people have even decided whether they like the person. And it gave you, buried under the self-sufficiency, under the careful distance, under the hypervigilance. You give them something that was never free, and that makes it the most valuable thing you have. If this reached you, share it with someone who was told their independence was a problem. Tell me in the comments. What was the moment early betrayal first showed you what it was? I read every single one.